My name is Emily Griffin, and I'm 36 years old. For most of my life, I believed every family had a favorite child. In mine, it was never me. That honor belonged to my younger sister, Rachel. She wasn't a bad person. She was simply the center of everyone's world. Every accomplishment she made became a family celebration. Every mistake she made was quickly forgiven. My parents proudly framed her report cards, her graduation photos, and every milestone she reached. Meanwhile, I learned that the easiest way to avoid disappointment was to expect nothing at all. I became the dependable daughter, the one who never caused problems, the one who solved them. When college ended, I chose a different path. Instead of chasing comfort, I joined the military. The training was exhausting, the expectations relentless, but for the first time in my life, effort mattered more than favoritism. Promotions were earned. Respect wasn't handed out because someone smiled the loudest at family dinners. Years later, after countless assignments, long deployments, and more sacrifices than I could count, I earned an opportunity few people ever receive. I was selected for a highly trusted position supporting operations connected with the White House. Because of security rules, I rarely discussed my work. Whenever my parents asked, I'd simply say, "It's a government job." That answer seemed to satisfy them. Or maybe they never cared enough to ask more. Rachel announced her engagement that spring, and everyone treated it like the event of the decade. My parents booked a beautiful venue, invited relatives from several states, and spent weeks posting excited updates online. I was genuinely happy for her. I even ordered an engraved crystal keepsake with both their names and engagement date. It wasn't cheap, but I wanted them to have something meaningful. The afternoon before the celebration, I finished my shift and checked my phone. One new message.
Dad.
I smiled, expecting directions or maybe a reminder about parking. Instead, I read 8 words that made my stomach sink. Don't come. The guest list is final. I stared at the screen, convinced I'd misunderstood. There was no explanation, no apology, no follow-up, just silence. For several minutes, I sat alone in my office, reading the same sentence over and over. I could have called. I could have argued. I could have demanded an answer. Instead, I placed my phone face down on the desk, took one slow breath, and quietly returned to work, believing that was the end of the story. I had no idea those 8 words would soon change everything. The engagement party came and went that weekend. I knew exactly when it started because my social media feed filled with photos almost immediately. Rachel stood smiling beside her fiancé under strings of elegant lights. My parents looked happier than I'd seen them in years. Relatives gathered around tables, raising glasses and celebrating the future. I wasn't in a single picture. For a moment, I'll admit it hurt. Not because I wanted attention, not because I needed an invitation, but because seeing your own family celebrate while pretending you don't exist creates a kind of loneliness that's difficult to explain. Still, I made a choice. I wasn't going to turn their decision into a fight. I wasn't going to post emotional messages online. I wasn't going to call relatives and tell my side of the story. If they wanted silence, I would give them silence. So while my family attended the engagement party, I spent the weekend doing exactly what I'd always done. Working. Monday morning arrived like any other. My team was preparing for a demanding project, and everyone was focused. Deadlines were approaching, meetings filled the schedule, and there wasn't much time to think about personal problems. Honestly, I preferred it that way. Work had always been simpler than family. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A senior official visited our department to recognize several teams for years of dedicated public service. It wasn't unusual for leadership to stop by, but this visit felt different. There were photographers, writers, public affairs staff. Apparently, a national publication was preparing a feature highlighting individuals who had spent years serving behind the scenes without public recognition. Most people in my position never appeared in articles. We did our jobs quietly and moved on. That's why I was shocked when one of the coordinators approached me after the meeting. "Emily, we'd like to include you in the feature." I actually looked behind me, assuming she was talking to someone else. She wasn't. A week later, professional portraits were taken. Then came interviews. Questions about leadership, sacrifice, service, responsibility. The entire experience felt surreal. When everything was finished, I returned to normal life and stopped thinking about it. Meanwhile, my parents continued posting engagement updates almost every week. Countdown photos, venue previews, family gatherings, smiling pictures with captions about how blessed they felt. Every image told the same story: a perfect family. And I wasn't part of it. The magazine eventually went to print, but I never mentioned it to anyone. Not my parents, not my sister, not even most of my friends. I didn't see the point. Recognition had never been why I served. Life moved forward, quietly, peacefully. Then one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. I was leaving work when my phone buzzed with a message from a neighbor back home. Attached was a photograph of a television screen. My face was on it. Beneath the image was a short text. "Emily, your parents haven't seen this yet, have they?" I didn't think much about my neighbor's message. I thanked her, put my phone away, and drove home. If my parents eventually saw the magazine, they saw it. If they didn't, that was fine too. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. 3 days later, fate made the decision for all of us. My father had a routine appointment with his doctor that Monday morning. Like most waiting rooms, there were stacks of magazines scattered across a coffee table. He later admitted he picked one up simply because he was bored. He wasn't looking for me. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. He was just passing the time. As he flipped through the pages, one article stopped him cold. The headline recognized public servants whose dedication often went unnoticed by the public. Beneath it, there I was, a full-page photograph, standing in my dress uniform, smiling confidently. Next to it was a short profile about my years of service, the leadership responsibilities I'd earned, and the commitment required for my position supporting operations connected with the White House. Nothing classified, nothing exaggerated, just the truth I'd quietly lived for years. According to my mother, Dad stared at that page for several minutes without turning it. Another patient eventually leaned over and smiled. "That's your daughter, isn't it?" Dad looked up, surprised. The man pointed toward my photograph. "I've seen this feature on the news. You must be incredibly proud." Dad forced a smile. "So, she's your daughter?" another woman asked. He nodded. "Yes." For the first time in years, strangers were congratulating him because of me. People who had never met our family seemed to know more about my accomplishments than my own parents did. When he arrived home, he placed the magazine on the kitchen table without saying a word. My mother picked it up first. Then Rachel. The house became unusually quiet. No one spoke for several moments. They slowly turned each page, reading every line beneath my photograph. Then reality settled over the room. They hadn't simply excluded their older daughter from an engagement party. They had excluded someone who had spent years serving her country while asking for nothing in return. Later that afternoon, relatives started calling. Aunts, uncles, family friends, neighbors. Everyone wanted to congratulate my parents. Almost every conversation ended with the same innocent question. "So, why wasn't Emily at Rachel's engagement party?" No one had an answer that sounded reasonable. That evening my phone began ringing. First Mom, then Dad, then Rachel, then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I watched every call appear on my screen, one after another. I answered none of them. Finally, just before midnight, Rachel left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. "Emily, please call me back." She paused, trying to steady herself before whispering words I never expected to hear. "How could you do this to our family?" I listened to Rachel's voicemail 3 times before I finally called her back the next evening. She answered before the first ring had finished. "Emily." Her voice sounded relieved. Then, almost instantly, relief turned into frustration. "How could you do this to our family?" I frowned. What exactly did I do? There was silence for a moment. "You embarrass Mom and Dad," she finally said. "Everyone keeps asking why you weren't at my engagement party. They're acting like we excluded you on purpose." I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. "I wasn't acting," I said quietly. "I was excluded. That's not fair." "No. You could have told people the truth differently." I didn't tell anyone anything. She hesitated. What do you mean? I never called our relatives. I never posted online. I never mentioned the magazine to mom or dad. I didn't even know they had seen it until all of you started calling me. Another long silence. I could almost hear her trying to put the pieces together. It just made us look bad. I closed my eyes for a second. Rachel, appearances weren't my responsibility. She sighed. Dad wants everyone to have dinner together. He says this whole thing has gotten out of hand. I smiled sadly. Out of hand? Yes. It was actually very simple. She didn't answer. I wasn't busy. I continued. I wasn't deployed. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't sick. I paused before saying the words that neither of us could escape. Dad told me not to come. The silence that followed felt endless. When Rachel finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. He didn't think it would become this. I wasn't interested in arguing anymore. He made a decision. I replied calmly. I respected it. Can't we just move past this? I already have. What does that mean? It means I accepted that I wasn't wanted at your celebration. Now I'm asking all of you to respect my decision the same way I respected yours. Rachel started crying softly. I never wanted our family to fall apart. Neither did I. For the first time since the conversation began, neither of us had anything left to say. I truly hope your wedding is beautiful, I said sincerely. I mean that. Before she could respond, I ended the call. Sometimes the strongest boundary isn't spoken in anger. Sometimes it's spoken with complete peace. And that peace was something no one in my family could take from me anymore.